Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 Systems Podcast, My Greatest Moment. I'm very pleased to welcome our guest for today, Trevor Stern. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being on today. I'm excited to talk about your story because I think it's one that is relatable to people in some ways and like, wow, okay, you do what in other ways. So let's start by just talking about, just tell us what your greatest moment is.
Sure. The name of the podcast, yeah, my greatest moment, unquestionably this past summer. So summer of 2024, the Vermont 100 race.
The Vermont 100 race. So for those on here who don't know what that is, what are you doing during it? Are you running, biking? What are you?
Yeah, it's a foot race. It's a 100-mile foot race in Vermont. And what I think is unique and fun about the Vermont 100, you're also doing it with people on horseback. So it's also a horse race as well. So that was unique running with with horses for 100 miles.
All right, very cool. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about that race, but I want to back up first on how you got there. So can you just talk a little bit about how you got into running, when it was, and
Yeah, absolutely. Running has very much been a staple in my life. I would say almost my entire life. I grew up in a household that, yeah, we were active. We were active. You know, when I look back on, I think probably the greatest moment of my childhood, I would think to like a 5-mile road race that I would do just with my father and my brother, my older brother. We'd run together. You know, we wouldn't try to outcompete each other. I've never ran competitively, right? So I never ran like cross country in high school. I didn't run in college. I played lacrosse. So played lacrosse kind of growing up. Played a lot of different sports. Played lacrosse in college as well. And you know, I think I really fell into running, and it became more of an anchor for me post college. You know, after I had graduated and I was just trying to find my way. You know, I was used to working out with a team, you know, having the prescribed strength and conditioning program that was given to us. And just as an athlete, I was just trying to figure out what would be next. And I found myself getting back into running more.
okay. So when you got back into running, was it for like the purpose of doing a race, or was it just more of a fitness thing for you, or what was the driver there?
I would say all the above. You know, I think we could spend a whole podcast just talking about why I love running. You know, so as I shared, I run my whole life. I even ran through college just because I enjoyed it. You know, go out for runs even before practice sometimes. But you know, I think where it turned, where I wanted to start trying some races was post college. You know, I had ran the 5Ks. I think I maybe had run like a 10K when I was in college. As I shared, you know, I ran that 5-mile road race with my father and my brother growing up every year. And ironically enough, my first year out of college, my older brother, who is a QT2 athlete, he had called me and he said, "Do you want to run a 50-mile race?" And I paused for a second and I was like, yeah, yeah, like I do. I was living in Colorado at the time. And then from there, I hung up the phone and I freaked out. I was like, what did I just commit to? What is this? So I went online and I like just found a training plan and you know started to train for the Vermont 50s. So a 50-mile run.
Okay, so I have to ask, because if someone called me today and said, "Hey, do you want to do a 50 mile?" I'd be like, "Yeah."
Every
So, how much were you running at the time? I mean, your brother must have thought that you were up for it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked you, maybe. Um,
Yeah, I think when I look back on it now, I like really was not running at all. Like I was probably going out on a few casual runs a week. And by casual, I mean, I don't know, like maybe three to four like 1 hour runs. So like I did not have a solid training block underneath me whatsoever.
Okay. And I mean, Vermont 52 is trail running, which is
Mhm.
slower,
Yep.
right, than road running. Okay. And so how much time did you have between when you hung up the phone and when the race was? How long did
Yeah,
you?
I think it was about a year.
Oh,
Yeah. So I definitely had some time. Maybe a little less than a year. I think I had found a plan online that was like maybe like a 6 month training plan.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So give me like you said this was right after college. Give me a chronological year. When was that?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. So I went back and looked. That was like 2016. I had run my first ultra marathon. That was Vermont 50 in 2016. Had never run a marathon before. I do remember like halfway through the Vermont 50, I paused and I like was like, all right, ran my first marathon, and then we kept going. I did run that with my brother, right? So par for the course. My brother's my best friend. We stayed together the entire time, and we had committed to each other that whatever ups and downs we were going to have, we'd ride through them together. So yeah.
Okay. I like that. All right. So you did your first one
Mhm.
and then,
Yeah. So then I really liked it. We had finished right in the middle of the pack, and by the middle, I think I did look it up. Like we were literally like right like in the middle of the pack for the Vermont 50. Don't quote me on that if I was lower, but after the race, I definitely it was hard. It was super hard. I think there was that aspect of it and being able to complete it that irrespective of however I felt in that moment finishing the race, I it changed me a lot because I'd always heard people say, like your body can always do more than what your mind will tell you. And at that moment for me, it was a little affirmation of like, whoa. And then on top of it, I had fun. I enjoyed the lows, I enjoyed the highs, and you end up talking to people. So like post race, I really enjoyed it. So then I signed up for another one. The following year, I gave myself some time to recover. And so in 2017, I signed up for the JFK 50
okay.
and used the same training plan that I had found online. Um, Truth be told, though, I went into that race with some different intentions. I think there was part of me that felt that I was able to do the distance. Nothing is guaranteed, right? So, like running that distance, like anything and everything can go wrong, and like you're not guaranteed. So, I didn't go in like super headstrong, like, I'm gonna win this thing. It was not that at all, but I set some goals for myself. I definitely wanted to do better than what I had did for the Vermont 50. And I did, but not like like it was like marginally better. I was really happy to have done the race. I enjoyed it, a much different race than the Vermont 50, kind of this like famous old ultra marathon in the United States. Like getting to Boonesboro, Maryland for the JFK 50 was not that pleasant, so it was like kind of in this obscure location. I had signed up for the JFK 50, but similar experience. Despite me not being totally excited with my time, I loved it. Like I had a great time. Like half of that race was, I believe it's on the Appalachian Trail, so like it was cool trail running, and then the other half of it is super flat. So it was like just kind of this interesting dichotomy of a race, which I had appreciated. But again, like post race, I really started to just develop this like gratitude and just this understanding of like, whoa, like my body is now like kind of bringing me to some pretty cool places and I'm meeting some cool people. And yeah.
Very cool. So did you run that one on your own?
Yeah. So that was by myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I had like a little crew came out with me. There weren't many crew stations there, but I had some support. But yeah, I ran that one by myself. My brother didn't run that one with me.
I mean, one of the things I find, I mean, very different about ultra running versus road running, marathons and
Mhm.
stuff is, I mean, in marathons, a lot of them have thousands of people. I mean, but in an ultra, even a big one, you're by yourself, right? I mean, so if you're
Yeah.
not intentionally running with someone or you don't pick someone up along the way, I mean, you could spend quite a bit of time on your own. So some people like that. Some people,
Yeah, I love that. I have since run a handful of road races, not like any of the major marathons or anything like that. But there's something about the solitude of trail running that I'm drawn to. There's definitely something about the solitude in, the longer ultras that I've run, which I enjoy. I've had people ask me, like, do you listen to music when you run these races? And like the answer is no. I know the rules say like you're not supposed to. I'm a rule follower, but even if I had wanted to like listen to music, I enjoy being out in the trails, on the trails, for the longer events.
okay. So, all right, so JFK 50 2017. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, so then I had a little bit of a hiatus. I still kept running. I tried to like maybe swing back into more weightlifting, which I had did quite a bit, when I was playing lacrosse. Uh, Truth also be told, I had lost a lot of weight. I wasn't used to like kind of being this like traditional runner. But I got the itch again to do another ultra marathon. And that's how like I became involved with QT2. As I mentioned before, my brother has worked with QT2 for many more years than I have. And he was encouraging me when I told him that I wanted to run another ultra marathon, a 50-mile distance again. He said, you need to get a coach. I didn't fully buy in. And then, he said something which really made sense to me. It was, you're already putting in the work. There are professionals like you and your team that understand things that I don't, like that we don't. And my brother kind of put it in those terms, and it made sense. Like I've had a coach my entire life, right? Like it didn't matter what sport I was playing. I have always had people that have known more than me that have helped guide me. My life was also getting a little more complicated too, only in the sense of work. My demands at work were becoming more. I had met my now wife, right? We were talking about starting a life together, the whole thing, and children, and all of that. Decided to jump in with QT2. And I'll never forget, I was sent, I think there was like maybe a list of coaches that I was sent. And I started researching, and I was intrigued by Jack Pilla, who I have now worked with since 2000, like 2018. And I had found an article that it was an article, there were a handful of articles written about Jack and just like his running and his, resume as a runner. But I had read this article and it was from an athlete. They had quoted an athlete that has worked with him, and the athlete referred to him as like Coach Devil. And I would think I was like, I think I want to work with this guy. So anyway, yeah. So in 2018, somewhat after the JFK 50, within like a year, a little less than a year, I started working with Jack and QT2.
Yeah. Jack is, I mean, he's a legend. When I interviewed him for his coach podcast, and his whole thing is, I just love running. I love everything about it. And it like
Mhm.
just like oozes from his body.
Yeah.
It's fun. And it's interesting because if you talk to him, getting him to say his own accomplishments is very difficult, but he will talk about his athletes all day long, so,
Hmm.
but I think that may be an ultra running characteristic.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So, but it's neat. So, okay, so you started with Jack in 2018, and did you have at that point like a plan on what race you wanted to do?
Yeah. So I wanted to take another whack at the Vermont 50. I'm from New England, so there was a convenience factor of heading up to Vermont, which was logistically just easy. But I love the race. Like it was where I started. The Vermont 50, it's always, right at the end of September. So like the weather's a little cooler. It's beautiful. So yeah, when I first started working with Jack, I had in my mind that I wanted to run the Vermont 50 again. So we set our sights on that.
Okay. So what was different about working with a coach versus using an online program for you?
Yeah, so much. I think first and foremost, I appreciated having a coach again in my life. But it was different, right? I was an adult, I had a job, so that dynamic um, was different in the sense of it was just like a different kind of coach athlete relationship than I had been used to. Not that it was bad, but it was just different, right? But the aspect of that I loved was one, I had someone who was as committed to me as I would be committed to the process, right? You know, I liked that dynamic. I would like to think I haven't asked Jack this, that he saw how committed I was. I loved being accountable. Like I had someone to be accountable to. And I struggled with some of that after college when I didn't have my team, just holding myself accountable, right? Like I was tired from work and all of these different things. And I had the gamut of excuses that all of us have, right? So I enjoyed that dynamic. And then like taking the guesswork out of my training, like it was so much more individualized. Where love the program that I found online and it helped me run 2 50-mile races. And I felt fine after those races. But there's very much a part of me that was like, I wanted to see what I could do. And I needed someone like on my team to like kind of come in and help me unlock some more of this passion that I had for running. And yeah, like have a professional in the field that knew what they were doing, got to know me. Um, and I really started to feel that I was willing to put in the time. Like that was never I was like, it's always been a non-negotiable for me. Like I'm gonna put in the time. But I really started to feel like it was maximizing my input. So like having Jack, like the output that I was able to get for all the time I was dedicating to this to try to do the best that I could, was worth it. And then, I've been working with him for a while now. Like Jack has become a friend. Jack knows quite a bit about my life and my family, and I feel honored to know Jack and, part of him and his family and story and like everything. And he knows my story. So yeah.
Very cool. So how'd you do it in the Vermont 50 that year versus how you did a couple
Yeah.
years before?
Yeah, I did well. So when I looked back at the times, I dropped, the Vermont 50 that I ran, having worked with Jack, it was a little less than an hour off of my time. So I think a little under 50 minutes. And, I had finished like in the, top chunk of the race, not like 1 through 10. I'd have to go back and look. I want to say like top 25. Um, and I remember after the race, Jack was like, man, you passed a lot of accomplished runners. And I was like, all right, like that. Yeah, that was cool. And I felt different.
Yeah.
I felt like a different runner. I appreciated having had the experience of running the race, so I kind of knew the course itself. But just as a runner, like the way that I felt in like the last like 15, plus miles, it was different.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, in the marathon, they always say it all comes down to the last 10K. And in ultra, what does it come down to? The last.
Yeah, I don't like, I feel like it's interesting. Probably, I mean, it could even come down to like the last six, after you run like in a 50-mile race, like, after you run like 44 miles, like a lot can happen. Like 6 miles is long.
It's so,
And
yeah.
you're also after a long day. So yeah, having worked with Jack, going and taking another whack at the Vermont 50, it really confirmed for me just, having Jack, working with a coach, and I was already sold before that, truthfully, but then after, I was ready for like the next. I was like, I was like, all right, what's next? So.
So you did. I mean, going from 50 to 100 is not an insignificant increase. How did you decide that you wanted to step it up with the volume?
I think it was more just I wanted to know what I could do. I just wanted to I wanted to see what I could push myself to do. I was scared though, truthfully, because when I talked to Jack about it, he goes, running a 100-mile race, it's not twice as hard as a 50, it's 4 times as hard. And I was like, okay. And then kind of like a recommitment to the volume and all of that. And I think what ultimately drove me to try to hit the training as much as I could was just fear, right? Like there was fear, and I still have fear, right? Anytime you toe the line on a long race, and I actually don't, part of me doesn't even care what distance it is. Like anytime we put ourselves and like you make that decision to toe a line for whatever distance, it's scary because you're putting yourself out there. And there's always so much that can go wrong. So yeah, I wanted to see what I can do, and I wanted to take a crack at it. I really wanted to run the Vermont 100, and I got more into ultra running at that time. So, I was reading about a lot more, a lot of different races. Actually, I have Ultra Running magazine on my desk, so it was, I just started to like get into the world more.
Okay. So, but there's a time gap here, right? So you said you started with Jack in 2018. Shortly after you decided you wanted to run a 100-miler in the Vermont 100. You didn't run until 2024. So what happened in between?
Yeah, COVID. COVID happened. So the year that I was planning to run the Vermont 100, my first year, COVID happened. So the race was canceled. That year, I was able to, through a charity slot, get a ticket to the Leadville 100. Leadville was always in the back of my mind, the order of operations for how I wanted to run 100-mile races. Like I really wanted to run the Vermont 100 first, and then, head out to the high mountains and try to run Leadville. So that year, like the first year, summer of COVID, Vermont 100 was canceled. I was able to get a charity slot at Leadville. And part of me was like, I don't know, maybe the West is wild, right? Like the race was going to go on. Leadville was canceled that summer as well. So, no racing. And then the following year, the Vermont 100 was canceled again due to COVID. But I still had my Leadville ticket. So I ran Leadville. And that was in was it 2021? Yeah,
2020.
2021.
So you figured.
Um, yeah, which is, I'll leave Leadville as it is. That was an interesting experience. I finished, was not pretty, was there were aspects of it that were fun. But yeah, I feel super grateful to have been able to cross the finish line in Leadville. But then after that, so then it was my third year, right? So the year after Leadville, trying to run the Vermont 100, and my son was born. So our son is our second. I had a daughter that was born before then, a couple years before, and I I like to think I would have been able to gut out the Vermont 100 that summer. So my son was born in the spring. He was born in March, and my training was secondary to husband and dad and professional, like my work. So I wasn't like emotionally and mentally in it. And I remember being really scared to call Jack and tell him that. And he heard me and he understood. So then I had emailed the race director, Amy, and I told her that I'm a recent father, and I essentially just said everything I just said. And she was a wonderful human about it. And she said, I understand. I'll let you roll like I'll let you roll over your ticket to the following summer. My time at Leadville essentially gave me I think it was a 2-year qualifying window to run the Vermont 100. So like the following summer, which would have been my fourth attempt at trying to run the race, I still had my qualifying time from Leadville. And then, which was super sad, Vermont got hit with all of those floods. And the area was, much of the area around the Vermont 100 and those communities were sadly just, they were smashed. And I remember reading about the floods, and truthfully, like my first thought was like, these poor people, right? Like this was this horrible flood that impacted all of these significant areas. And then although the decision wasn't made immediately, I think deep down I was like, I don't see how this race could, one, like morally and ethically probably go off. I don't know, like I'm sure many felt like I did. Like I don't know if I'd feel totally comfortable like running this massive race that like stresses an area to begin with, right? Because there are a lot of resources are involved in any types of these races. Ultimately, the decision was made, I think, for all of the above reasons, right? That the race shouldn't happen. And I had, so that was my fourth summer trying to run the Vermont 100. So that brought me to this past summer, the summer of 2024. It was my fifth attempt at trying to run the Vermont 100. I had to requalify, get a requalifying time, which I was able to do. And yeah, that brought me to the race this past summer.
Okay, that's a lot of false starts, but
Yeah.
that's better, I guess. Not starting is better than starting and having issues and having to
Right.
again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, wow. I mean, good reasons. I mean, and I appreciate that what you're saying about the community. We were there. I ran the relay, the Vermont 100 on 100 relay later, and it was a question mark too, because now it's a few months later, and that's not on trails. It's not really the same sections are, but you could still see, the devastation in the community.
Mm.
And we weren't in the middle when it was all coming down, all the destruction. So, okay, so let's talk about race day then. What made it so great?
Yeah, I think just getting there was an awesome feeling. I was nervous, right? I had run, not to get too into the weeds, I had some inconsistencies with some races, like, the year prior, all of that stuff. But I hadn't run a 100-mile race since Leadville, and my experience at Leadville, albeit that I finished, it was hard. So I went into the Vermont 100. I was nervous, understandably so, but I also had I had this feeling of serenity as well, which I hadn't necessarily, I've never felt as as a runner trying to run some of these races. Like I felt comfortable knowing that I put in all the training that I could have put in. And it wasn't perfect, and I'm sure if Jack was on here, he would say that. But for like me just getting to that point, I found comfort in the fact that I controlled all of the controllables that I was able to. Um, and that gave me a sense of serenity. I was up in Vermont with my wife came. She brought our children came as well. Like they made Vermont 100 t-shirts for me. It also happened to be, it was coinciding with my daughter's fifth birthday. So I was like in my head, I'm like, this is like year 5 trying to run this race. My daughter had just turned 5. I come from a really small family. Like family is everything to me. Like I had my people there. My mother and my father had come, and my brother came. They were all part of my crew. So I was so excited, and I wanted to make them proud. There was this level of an acknowledgement to my wife and my children for the time that it had taken me to train. I wanted it to be for something, and I wanted them to have a good day. Because it's not like you train a lot and you run a lot, and there's like a lot of volume to it. Um, so I wanted everyone to have a good day. But yeah, I was like totally nervous as well, right? Because like failure and fear, like it's always in the back of your mind. Um, Jack agreed to pace me, which also like in my head, I'm like, so you could pick up a pacer at mile 70. I was like, I need a sustain to 70. And in true Jack form, he was like, there's a big climb after 70, and we're gonna grind, like he said something like, I know how to make runners grind. So I was like, all right, great. Like, great. Yeah, so that was some of the build up to to the race itself. And like the weather came together, and I think it went off at 4 in the morning. Like by the time the gun went off and my headlamp was on and I was with all the other runners, like I was just ready to do it. It was just many, many years in the making. So
So I do want to ask you, you referenced running a lot of volume. How,
mhm.
like, what are we talking about here? What were your like peak training weeks in terms of volume?
Yeah, so built up to like like 80, 90, 100 mile week. My base running has always been about 50 miles a week. So that's like just kind of since I've started working with Jack, I've been able to build up to like just kind of like an easy base standard week is like 50 miles a week. And now having worked with Jack for the years that I have, I've like now I think finally understand some of the methodology to it. So yeah, it was a nice build. Like I had and I'm gonna say we, like not just I, like we had a great, it was a great training block building up to it. I was knocking on wood all the time, like my body felt okay. I had a couple of tune-up races that I felt good and went well. So yeah, I think I peaked at 100-mile week, and I almost didn't hit it. But like mentally for me, like would it have made a difference in my race? I don't know. But like mentally for me, it was like I just, I wanted to hit that peak week and then like taper down from there.
Well, I mean, you do. It's all about what the mind believes. So if you're
Right.
hit 100 miles to believe you could do it, then it made
Yeah.
a difference, no question. So you get out there, you see Jack at mile 70, and this is Vermont 100. It's just it's not a looped course, right? It's just a
Mm.
So there's no, once
Yeah.
you're in. That's it.
Yep.
So you see Jack at 70, did he run the rest with you?
Yeah, he did. I had seen him at a few of the major aid stations beforehand. The first one that I saw him at, he had given me a pace plan. And I was so excited to have seen him the first time I did. I think it was around like 20 or so miles. And I knew I was, and he just affirmed, he's like, you're right on pace. And, kind of walked into the crew station with me, asked me the questions, are you eating? Like, how's your heart rate? Like, all of that stuff. Um, and then at around 50 miles, I was expecting to see Jack, but I didn't see him. I actually ended up coming in, like, I think it was like an hour and a half or an hour 45 before I was planning on coming in. And I saw my brother and my wife, and they were just setting up the cruise station. From mile like 20 to 50, um, I started to feel I started to like find a groove. When I run ultra marathons, for me, I don't care how long I'm running. It's always like the first 20 miles. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, and like just like the enormity of the day is like, I get stressed out, right? So after 20, I started to fall into a groove. So Jack was not there. Um, and which was like, totally fine. I wasn't totally planning to see him at 50. But I saw my brother and my wife and got some food and some love and a hug and, kind of went on my way. And yeah, I was just in my head, I was like, just survive until you get Jack. And I was like, whatever happens.
I
Yeah.
was saying, coming in an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes ahead of what you thought. So you were way ahead of pace. I mean, did that make you nervous at all? Or were you just feeling you were just running how you felt? And
Yeah, I was kind of running how I felt. It didn't make me nervous at the moment, but my brother at mile 50 was like kind of looking at me like, are you okay? And was like, just, was trying to say, he didn't flat out say like, you're flying too close to the sun.
right.
But he was asking some questions that when I left the aid station and I was thinking about that conversation, I was like, am I flying too close to the sun? I tracked my heart rate, like my heart rate was low. Just from the races that I've run, I know my body well enough now to know when some of the signals are like things are wrong. And luckily at that moment I wasn't. So I just rode the like I rode the wave of that.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, good. I mean, great training cycle, perfect taper. You're supposed to feel good on race day.
Right.
Now you're 70 and you see Jack, and I mean, that must help, right? To raise your energy and give you a whole new like focus to have him there with you.
Yeah, it was everything. I was so happy to see him. I was also like, I was excited to run with him. Like we had not spent that much like physical time together, since I had worked with him. The beauty of it, we don't live in the same town, so the way that we communicate is like the rest of us do, right? Email and training peaks and phone calls and all that stuff. So, I had not actually spent like quality time with Jack. And I was looking forward to that. And then, yeah, there was this sense of security too. Like I was like, I'm going with Jack. He had won the race when like he knows the course like the back of his hand. And yeah, we went off together and finished it.
Yeah. Wow. So how did you finish based on what you expect
Yeah,
racing plan had you set for?
yeah. My A goal, I wanted to finish, right? So I think my overarching goal for all of this stuff is like just finish.
Mhm.
Uh, I would not have been happy because here are my goals, right? So I just wanted to finish. So like I have to say, like my overarching A goal was like finish. My like A.1 goal, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to break 24 hours. Like that was big for me. But Jack had said you should look at 22 hours. Uh, which gave me a nice sense of confidence. But I didn't have that much experience running 100-mile races. So like the pacing of it was, I just like, I didn't really know. So yeah, from 20, like finish 24 hours, 22. I ended up breaking 21 hours. So I ran it in 20 hours and 56 minutes. Um, and yeah, there was a moment, and I don't remember what mile we were at. It was definitely after 80. And I remember Jack had said to me, headlamps were out. It got nice and cool, which was good. So like the sun went in. Vermont though is still like you have 1,000% humidity, so it was like still super humid out. And he had said to me, and I had lost track of time at that point, but I had kept asking him, like, are we on pace? Are we on pace? And he was like, yeah, we're fine, we're fine. And he had said to me at some point, he's like, do you want to break 21 hours? And I remember responding like, sure, if I can. And I don't remember exactly what he said after that, but like the response kind of said to me from him was like, it's a yes or a no question. Like, like it's a yes or a no question. And he didn't say that verbatim, but like that was, kind of the feeling that I got. And I was like, yeah, like let's try to do it. I would love, yeah. I didn't have a sub 20 in me. I know how my body felt. Yeah, broke 21 hours, which I feel super grateful to have been able to have that experience. Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, that's huge. Wow. So yeah, if Jack was asking you, it meant he thought you could do it.
Yeah.
Like, get on board. Oh, nice. So you finished,
Mhm.
and I mean, that was July, mid-July, right? Went
Mhm.
100. And so what's next for you?
Oh,
Do you
that's
know?
a great question. I'm trying to figure it out. I will continue running. I definitely want to run more 100-mile races. There are races that are bigger than that, which I don't know if I'm there yet. I think as with everything, I'm in like a little bit of a recalibration mode, to be quite transparent, to the internet universe. Trying to spend, I'm still running a lot, you know, uh, but, I told my wife I would downshift just a little. I don't know what that means. I'm still training. In the back of my mind, just because it's a little bit of a different sport, I do maybe want to try my hand, like trying to run a super hard marathon. Um, Only because, yeah, like I've only done like a smidgen of like marathon training, and yeah, it like felt like a different sport. Like mile repeats on the like track work, like all that stuff was just super different. So that's kind of in the back of my mind. There are definitely some 100-mile races that are out there that if I have the opportunity to run them, I would try, but I don't have anything set right now. So I don't want to lose my fitness. So I'm trying to stay in shape. But yeah, I'm in an interesting limbo right now, just trying to figure out what that actual next step is. Uh, so TBD.
All right. Well, you can have your journey. Say that the path that we take is often very like, you
Right.
get where you're supposed to in the end. And so
Mhm.
just 5 years running to get yourself to the Vermont 100 to have like such a breakout race for you. I mean, that's awesome. So hats off and
Thank you.
congratulations. And It sounds like so much came together on that day when it was supposed to, and when it was meant to happen. It wouldn't have been the same if you'd done it in 2020, I'm sure. So
Yeah, no, I agree. And running always, well, thank you for saying that. And thank you to like you and your team and like Jack. Running on its face value is this like solo pursuit. But what ultra running has truly showed me, there's a lot that goes into making it work. Like from Jack helping me on so many different levels, right? Not just like writing workouts for me and like giving me weekly goals and all that stuff, to, people that come and crew you, right? Like my family, people that it was like, it's miserable. Like they were like, they're out there all night. Like, it's not fun. I have been a crew for others, and like it's not fun being a crew member. But I feel so blessed to have people that have sacrificed for me to be able to go out and, run the Vermont 100 after 5 years of trying to run it. So QT2, Jack, like you guys are a huge part of that and have like allowed for me to been able to enjoy, just enjoy this sport, accomplish some goals, get to the starting line in the best shape that I'd be able to be, and yeah, continuing to set goals. And then of course, like my family and my wife and my kids and, my parents and my brother, like, so yeah, like, um, it's a team effort. Like it really, really is. And, I selfishly, yeah, like I got to cross the finish line, but that for me, like that race was for everyone that was in Vermont at that moment. I wanted to deliver that and have everyone, hopefully find, some pride in it.
yeah, I'm sure they did. It's one of my joys is always having my son who's watched me sacrifice a lot to train to get to races. And when he's there cheering me on, it just changes the entire day for me. It really makes it so different, So hopefully one day, well, I know I'll be cheering him on way more in
Right.
directions now, but I'm his biggest fan. It's nice to have him be mine sometimes too. So
Mm.
all right, thank you so much, Trevor. Really appreciate you taking the time and telling your story. And you almost maybe made me want to do an ultra race. Almost, not 100,
Yeah.
because I need to. I'm still looking for my next adventure now too.
Yeah, well, have Jack pace you.
Yeah,
He's an incredible pacer.
yeah, yeah. Jack he makes me laugh. Oh, we need a 3:30 pacer for the marathon. Okay, I'll just jump
Yeah,
in. Yeah,
right.
Jack. Yeah.
No,
Thank you, Trevor.
thank you.